Fungi. So what exactly is fungi? Are it just plants without photosynthesis? Well, not exactly. Fungi are eukaryotic organisms that occur either unicellular or multicellular. The most common types of fungi are mushrooms, yeast, and molds, with yeast being one of the few unicellular fungi. So now you might ask, what's the purpose of fungi? Are fungi just there for no reason? Well, the answer is no. Fungi are important because they're decomposers. They work with bacteria and they break down organic matter to release carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus into the soil and the atmosphere to benefit the plants and animals. Fungi are everywhere. They can be at lakes, rivers, at mountains, even at your house. They can be in the tropics up to the high Arctic. And yeah, there are fungi in the high Arctic. Example would be the lichenized fungi. You can see there's an image of it in the top right corner. And a fun fact about fungi would be that for almost every plant and animal, including humans, there's at least one fungal parasite for them.
What is the meaningful anatomical structures of a fungi? The first one is features. Many fungi look like plants, but fungi are heteropause. Second is mycelium. A fungal mycelium is a network of thread-like filaments called hyphae. Hyphae are the bunchy filaments that make up the mycelium of a fungal. Third is fruiting body. The fruiting body of a fungus is a reproductive structures. And the last one is spores. The spores are inside the fruiting body of the fungus and involved in fungal reproduction. The most important physiology part of a fungi is mycorrhiza. It can deal with plants. Plants offer vitamins or minerals from photosynthesis to fungi, and the fungi offer them water. They do this through their roots. By using a number of different carbon salts to meet their needs for the synthesis of carbohydrates. Hyphae is also important. Fungi eat by penetrating the dead tissues of the plant, and the hyphae release enzymes to digest it and absorb the nutrients.
Reproduction. So you might be wondering, how do fungi reproduce? Do they reproduce like plants of seeds? Well, sort of in a way. Fungi can reproduce either asexually or sexually, with the only exception of yeast, who can only reproduce asexually. And fungi reproduce by means of spores. In the diagram below, on the bottom right corner, you can see an image of a mushroom. On the fruit body of the mushroom, it's packed with those gills. And inside those gills, it's just a lot of hyphae that are attached to spores. And when the mushroom becomes mature enough, the spores burst out, and it's like seeds just bursting out. And that's how fungus reproduce. As you know, most fungi reproduce by forming spores that can survive extreme conditions such as cold and lack of water. Both sexual meiotic and asexual mitotic spores may be produced depending on the species and conditions. Most fungi life cycles consist of a both diploid and a haploid stage. Now for mushrooms, let's start with asexual reproduction. Now what happens is that the spores, they start germinating if the ground's moist enough and there's food nearby. And then the hyphae that starts underground start feeding and growing in the soil, and then eventually a young mushroom forms and it becomes a bigger mushroom, and that's how it is. Now for sexual reproduction, it's a lot different. What happens is that the haploid hyphae from two fungal organisms meet and join. Now, this interconnected network is called anastomosis, in which the two hyphae meet and join, and the cell plasms from each of them fuse together, but the nuclei remain separate though. The hyphae produced by this union, called the dicharium, have two distinct nuclei. The dicharium forms sexual spagotia, or spore cases, in which the nuclei fuse into one. The cell then undergoes meiosis to form haploid spores, and the cycle is repeated. And here's a diagram, as you can see here, the cycle for sexual reproduction. After the dicharium happens, the mushroom starts growing. And then eventually it becomes a brand new mushroom that's ready to reproduce once again. Now, an example of a mushroom who reproduces sexually will be a Bacillus macetilis. And here's a diagram of its life cycle. Yeast. You might be wondering, how do yeast reproduce then? For yeast, they reproduce in a special method compared to other fungi. They reproduce by this budding method, which is very similar to mitosis, and it's asexual reproduction, where the parent cell creates two daughter nuclei and they just split up, exactly like mitosis. And this is how yeast reproduce as unicellular organisms. Truffle. The domain is Eukarya. The kingdom is fungi. The phylum is Ascomycauta. The order is Prassices, and the family is Tubaceae. The genus in this type is Tuber, and the species is Tubermelastrum.
Truffles can be an important food source for animals within their ecosystems. The animals which may eat them, such as squirrels, mice, or fox, then become food themselves for larger prey, and the circle goes on. Also, the heavy of truffles latched onto the roots of trees to create symbiotic relationship called mycorrhizing. The truffle provides the tree with extra water and nitrogen absorption, and the trees give the truffle sugar in return. Truffles are a great source of antioxidants.
That is about it for fungi. Thanks for watching.